The ancient laws forbid intervention, yet neutrality itself has become the trap.
The chamber breathed with her. Not alive, not sentient. Responsive. Syrien stood at its center, bare stone beneath her boots, the faintest glow of dormant ley lines circling her like a patient animal. The space was old, not ceremonial, not beautiful, built for one purpose only: containment. Two figures waited at the edge of the circle. They did not look at each other. The one from Mirkdusk knelt because he understood survival. Scarred hands rested against the floor, fingers twitching with habits learned in darker places. The Atherin agent stood, posture immaculate, fear carefully hidden behind etiquette. His loyalty was conditional, his usefulness was measured. Syrien did not acknowledge either of them at first. "Speak," she said. The Mirkdusk spy went first. The prisoners were returned. That earned her attention. Syrien turned slightly, one pale eye catching the low light. All of them. Yes, publicly, no concessions, no compensation demanded. A pause. They're calling it precedent. The words settled into the chamber like ash. Precedent, Syrien repeated. How reckless. She shifted her gaze to the Atherin agent. You. There is movement, he said carefully. Quiet inquiries. No formal summons, but the courts are preparing. For what? A meeting. Her attention sharpened. Where? He hesitated. That was mistake number one. The Shadow Realm bar. The ley lines brightened. Not dramatically, deliberately. Syrien exhaled slowly. Neutral ground, she murmured, which means no one can lie about being afraid. She began to pace the circle, boots tracing the ancient etchings. They're not seeking allegiance, she continued. They're seeking exposure. The Mirkdusk spy added, Grimm enforces the rules himself. A thin smile curved her lips. Of course he does. No entourages, the Atherin agent said. No ceremonial protections, titles left at the door. Syrien stopped. That isn't a meeting, she said. That's a wound. She turned back toward them. And wounds attract scavengers. Do we intervene? The Atherin agent asked. Her gaze snapped to him. No. The word was final. We listen. She raised one hand. Stay close, she ordered. Not to the meeting. A pause. To the ones who leave it. They withdrew quickly, the chamber sealed, and only then did Syrien allow herself to breathe. The pressure arrived immediately. A familiar weight behind her eyes. A crown pressing where no crown belonged. Neutral ground, the voice inside her murmured. They never learn. I know, Syrien replied softly. The wolf moves first, Ultranacious said. He always does. You lost to him, she reminded. The pressure sharpened, then eased into something like amusement. I endured. She placed a hand against her chest, steadying a heartbeat that wasn't entirely hers. They think the danger is the meeting, she said. They're wrong. They are teaching each other where to bleed. Her smile was slow, real. Yes, she agreed, which means I finally have use for something I've been keeping alive. She turned and walked. The air changed as she descended, not colder, heavier. The deepest level was not warded for escape. It was warded for survival denial. The deepest cell was never meant to be visited. It existed below wards, below maps, below the kind of places people admitted to knowing about. The stone there drank sound. Light dulled to a sickly grey before it reached the walls. Even magic behaved differently, as if it resented being forced so far down. Syrien descended alone. The trader felt her before he saw her. The chains etched into the stone trembled faintly as she entered the cell. He hung upright only because the restraints refused to let him fall. Skin stretched tight over bone, breath shallow, alive in the narrowest, cruelest definition of the word. His eyes cracked open. For a moment there was only confusion. Then, recognition. No, he whispered. Syrien stopped a few steps away and crouched so they were eye level. "Hello," she said gently. "You look unresolved?" He laughed once. It broke into a cough. "You kept me alive," he rasped. "Why?" She tilted her head, studying him the way one studied a damaged instrument. "Because you understand something no one else does," she replied. "You understand how people convince themselves they're still good while doing unforgivable things." His gaze flicked to her chest, to her eyes. He saw it then. The echo, the gravity, the presence he thought he'd buried with old bargains and broken oaths. His breath hitched. "You," he whispered. "You carry him." Syrien smiled, not wide, not kind. "I do," she said. "And he remembers you." The pressure in the cell deepened. Not enough to crush, enough to remind. The trader sobbed quietly. "I didn't know," he said, "about her, about what she would become." "You knew enough," Syrien replied. "You always do." She stood and turned away, pacing the short length of the cell as if thinking aloud. "There's going to be a gathering soon," she said casually. "A small one. Very polite. Very restrained." His head lifted despite himself. "Neutral ground," he breathed. Syrien glanced back over her shoulder. "Still sharp," she observed. "Even now." He swallowed. "You're going to send me?" "Yes." His laughter came fast, cracked, terrified. "They'll kill me." She nodded. "Katrina will try. Shade won't hesitate." The name hurt him more than the chains. "You're playing with truce," he said hoarsely. "With rules that don't bend." Syrien stepped close again. Too close. "That's the point." She leaned in, voice low enough that it felt like a secret shared rather than a threat. "You're going to walk in quietly," she said. "You're going to belong there just long enough to be seen." His eyes were wide now, understanding dawning. "You don't want me to survive." "No," Syrien agreed. "I want you to be present." She straightened. "If you die," she continued calmly, "you prove oaths are weapons waiting to be triggered." "If you live," she added, "you prove neutrality protects monsters." She smiled again, thin and satisfied. "Either way, something sacred cracks." The trader sagged in his chains. "You're worse than him," he whispered. Syrien paused at the door. "No," she said softly. "I'm what happens after." She left him there, alone with the certainty that his next steps would be watched by gods, wolves, and ghosts he helped create. The wards sealed. Above, far beyond stone and silence, the world continued preparing for a meeting it believed was still hypothetical. And Syrien smiled, knowing the first rule had already been violated. The cell sealed behind her with a sound that felt final. Stones settled. Wards reasserted themselves. The air lightened marginally, as if the world itself exhaled in relief at her departure. Syrien walked. Slow, unhurried, the way one walked when there was nothing left to prove. "You're worse than him!" The trader's words followed her down the corridor, clinging like residue. She stopped, not abruptly, deliberately. For a moment there was only the quiet drip of water somewhere far above and the faint hum of ancient wards. Then she smiled. "Am I?" she asked softly. The presence stirred, not angrily, not defensively, amused. "He feared me," Ultranacious said, his voice unfolding through her thoughts like a remembered crown. "Fear confuses judgment." Syrien resumed walking. "He didn't say I was stronger," she replied. "He said I was worse." A pause. The pressure shifted, subtle but attentive. "You have ambition," the Demon King observed. "I had inevitability." "That's not the difference," Syrien said. She turned a corner, boots echoing once before being swallowed by distance again. "You wanted dominion." "Of course. I want choice." That earned silence. Real silence, the kind that meant she had struck something true. Choice is chaos, Ultranacious said at last. Chaos fractures empires. Good, Syrien replied. Empires deserve to fracture. The corridor opened into a broader chamber. Dim light reflected faintly off her eyes, and for just a moment her shadow did not align with her shape. It wore horns. It wore memory. Ultranacious felt it. You don't want worship, he said slowly. You don't want obedience. No, Syrien agreed. Those are fragile. She stopped again, this time placing a hand against the stone wall, grounding herself against the pressure behind her eyes. I want people to damn themselves without being told to, she continued. I want them to choose the wrong thing and believe it was survival. A low, thoughtful sound echoed through her thoughts. Not laughter. Appreciation. You are not my vessel, Ultranacious said. You are my evolution. Syrien closed her eyes briefly. Careful, she murmured. That's the kind of thinking that gets gods killed. When she opened them again, the pressure receded just enough to breathe. She continued on. Behind her, deep beneath stone and silence, a broken man waited to be loosed into a room that believed itself sacred. Ahead of her, a meeting waited that still thought it had rules. Syrien smiled. Worse, she repeated to herself. And for the first time she agreed. Chapter 22. The Cottage. The cottage was quiet in the way only places of retreat ever were. Not empty, settled. Aeliana closed the door behind them and leaned her back against it for a moment longer than necessary. The fire crackled softly, the sound too ordinary for the conversation sitting between them. Gunnar set his jacket down over the back of a chair but didn't sit. He hadn't stopped moving since they left the chamber. Not pacing, just refusing stillness. He wasn't talking about the bar, Gunnar said at last. Aeliana looked up, slowly nodded. No, she agreed. He was talking about what happens to us because of it. Gunnar turned, resting a hand against the table. Neutral ground becomes dangerous when too many truths arrive at once. She exhaled. He chose that phrasing carefully. He always does, Gunnar said. Same with the other one. Aeliana's fingers tightened slightly at her side. Realms forgive violence sooner than confusion, she quoted quietly. That one bothered me, Gunnar said. It was meant to. She crossed the room and sat, smoothing her robes without thinking. A habit. A tell. The meeting isn't just a risk, she continued. It's a convergence. Old oaths. Old wounds. People who have never been forced to exist in the same space without shields. Gunnar nodded. Truth without distance. And that, Aeliana said softly, is when mistakes happen. Silence settled again, heavier now. Gunnar broke it with a thing they'd both been circling. And then he asked about the wedding. Aeliana's mouth curved faintly. Not amusement. Recognition. He wasn't being sentimental, she said. He was placing an anchor. Gunnar leaned back against the table, or warning us that we hadn't yet. She met his gaze. He said anchors placed too late tend to drift. Meaning, Gunnar said, if we don't choose where we stand before that meeting. The meeting will choose for us, Aeliana finished. The fire popped. A spark lifted, then vanished. He knows Syrien will move during the meeting, Gunnar said. Not after. Yes, Aeliana replied, if she learns of it before it concludes. And she will. Aeliana didn't argue. She thrives on moments like that, she said, when restraint becomes a liability and oaths become weapons. Gunnar's jaw tightened. Which means someone will try to provoke confusion. Not violence. Confusion. She watched him closely now. And if violence follows? She asked. Then at least it's honest, Gunnar said. Confusion gets people killed slowly. Aeliana closed her eyes for a brief moment. That's why he couldn't tell us more, she said. The staff showed resonance, not prophecy. He can't interfere without shaping the outcome. So he talked about the wedding instead, Gunnar said. Yes. Aeliana stood and moved closer to him, stopping just short of contact. He was reminding us that we are not only participants, she said. We are stabilizing forces now, together. Gunnar studied her face, the resolve there, the quiet fear beneath it. And if the meeting tries to pull us apart? He asked. Aeliana didn't hesitate. Then it will fail. That surprised him. He smiled faintly. Good, he said, because I'm not walking into that room uncertain about one thing while asking everyone else to be honest. She reached for his hand, just briefly. Then we place the anchor, she said. Not for ceremony, not for tradition. For stability, Gunnar said. For choice, she corrected gently. They stood there in the quiet, the fire low, Alfheim unchanged and uncaring about the pressure building beyond its trees. The meeting was still a day and a half away, but the storm Maelorian feared had already found its centre, and this time it would not drift. Gunnar broke the silence first. We're done floating. Aeliana didn't ask what he meant. She already knew. He wasn't warning us to wait, Gunnar continued. He was warning us what happens if we don't choose. She nodded once. Anchors placed too late tend to drift. And I'm not letting that room decide anything for us, he said. Aeliana stepped closer, the decision settling into place as if it had been waiting for permission. Then we set it, she said. Not tentative. Certain. Gunnar met her gaze. Before the meeting. Yes. No council, he added. No audience. Aeliana's mouth curved into a small, fierce smile. Alfheim. At dawn. He considered it for half a heartbeat. The forest witnesses, not politics. 9 days, she said. A week after the meeting. Close enough to matter, Gunnar replied. Far enough that we walk in alive. She reached for his hand, squeezing once. Solid, real. Anchor placed, Aeliana said. Gunnar nodded. Whatever happens in that room, it happens knowing this doesn't move. Outside, the forest stirred, indifferent to councils and storms alike. Inside the cottage, something fundamental locked into place. The meeting could test oaths, it would not test them. Chapter 23, Preparations. The bar looked the same as it always did, that was the point. Low light, scarred wood, a jukebox that hadn't worked in years and didn't need to. From the street, it was still a dive. From anywhere that mattered, it was neutral ground held together by rules older than most grudges. Rose stood behind the bar, sleeves rolled up, polishing a glass that was already clean. Silas watched her from the far end, arms folded, expression unreadable in the way only someone who'd survived Concordia could manage. You're early, he said. I'm never early, Rose replied. I'm on time. Everyone else is late. She set the glass down, then picked up another. Wards? She asked. Silas didn't need to check. Holding. Reinforced. Grimm's already pacing. Good, Rose said. That means he's nervous. That usually means you should be too. She smiled faintly. I already was. I'm past that part. Silas shifted his weight. We've got confirmations from 3 realms. 2 more undecided. 1 pretending they don't care. Which means they care the most, Rose said. She glanced around the room, eyes cataloguing exits, sightlines, the subtle hum beneath the floorboards. No banners, Silas continued. No entourages. Everyone agreed to the rules. Rose snorted softly. Everyone always agrees to the rules. They just disagree about when they apply. She leaned forward on the bar, lowering her voice. Anyone ask for exceptions? 1, Silas said, very politely. And? I said no. Rose looked at him, genuinely pleased. That's why I keep you. She straightened, finally letting the glass sit. This isn't a negotiation, she said. It's a pressure test. People are coming here thinking they're protected. Silas raised an eyebrow. Aren't they? Rose met his gaze. From violence? Yes. From consequences? Not even a little. A beat. You expecting trouble? He asked. I'm expecting honesty, she replied. Trouble usually follows. Silas glanced toward the back where the door to the deeper warded space waited, quiet and patient. And Gunnar? We'll do exactly what he said he'd do, Rose answered, which means everyone else will underestimate him right up until they don't. Silas hesitated. And Syrien? Rose's hands stilled for the first time. She won't show, Rose said. She doesn't need to. That earned silence. She'll let other people make her point for her, Rose continued calmly. That's what this room is for. Silas exhaled. You still think this was the right call? Rose's smile returned. Sharp. Certain. No, she said. I think it was the only one. She glanced toward the door as if already seeing shadows that hadn't arrived yet. Reset the bottles, she added. No labels facing out. Make them look like choices. Silas shook his head. You're impossible. I know, Rose said. That's why the bar's still standing. Outside, the street remained quiet. Inside, neutrality waited, polished and ready. The event was less than 2 days away, and Rose had already decided who would leave comfortable. It just wouldn't be the people who expected to. Chapter 24, War Room. The war room lights were already on when Rose arrived. Maps displayed the main monitor. Live feeds hovered along one wall. The den felt awake in the way only places built for violence ever did. Gunnar stood at the head of the table. Clara was to his right, arms folded. Sophia and Desiree were already in place, quiet, focused. Caleb, Eli, Darren and Bianca filled in along the far side. No one wasted time. Status, Gunnar said. Darren answered immediately. Wolfmobile's ready to roll. Gunnar's eyes flicked to Eli. Enchantments completed at 0300, she said. Turrets synced. Mixed load. Mobility? Gunnar asked. Fast, Darren said. Quiet when needed, ugly when it's not. Caleb stepped forward. I'll drive. Desiree mans the turret. Desiree gave a single nod. Bianca tapped her console. Drone nets live. I'll have eyes on every exit within 6 blocks. Thermal, aerial, street level. Gunnar absorbed it all, then looked to Clara. QRF composition? Lean, Clara replied. Pack elements on standby, no presence near the bar itself. We track departures, not arrivals. Good. Sophia cleared her throat. I'm adding my squad, she said. 8 operators. Plain clothes. They won't touch the bar, but they'll be positioned along primary egress routes. Gunnar looked at her. Air? 2 Black Hawks, Sophia replied evenly. High overhead orbit. Dark. No lights, no noise unless I say otherwise. They're there for rapid extraction or containment if something spills wide. Rose arched an eyebrow. That's a lot of hardware for a neutral meeting. Sophia met her gaze. Neutral doesn't mean unprepared. Gunnar turned then, finally addressing the reason Rose was there. I want a staging area close, he said. Close enough to move fast, far enough to keep the truce clean. Rose raised an eyebrow. You're thinking my brownstone. Yes, Gunnar said plainly. Temporary. Discreet. No uniforms, no weapons visible outside. Rose studied him for a moment, weighing something deeper than logistics. And if it blows back on me, she asked. Gunnar didn't dodge it. It will. Silence. Then Rose smiled, sharp and approving. At least you're honest, she said. Fine, you can use it. Sophia looked up. Parameters? Rose answered without looking at her. No operations launched from inside the bar, no echo presence inside. If something happens inside, Grim handles it. And if it happens after? Desiree asked. Rose's gaze slid back to Gunnar. Then it's not my bar's problem anymore. Gunnar nodded. That's all I'm asking. He looked around the table, voice steady. This meeting isn't about stopping what happens in that room, he said. It's about being ready for what walks out of it. No one argued. The meeting wound down without ceremony. Screens dimmed, feeds minimized. People started moving, already executing before anyone officially dismissed them. Gunnar caught Rose before she reached the door. Walk with me, he said. She glanced at him, then nodded. I figured. They stepped aside just far enough that the rest of the room blurred into background motion. I want to see the site, Gunnar said. Your bar, the street, the angles. Rose didn't bristle. She respected that instinct too much. Now? Yes. A beat. I don't need a tour, he added. I need to understand how people will leave it. Rose's mouth curved slightly. You're already thinking past the truce. I'm thinking past the lies, Gunnar replied. She studied him for a second, then turned toward the exit. Fine. You'll hate how much you like it. Behind them, Gunnar raised his voice just enough to carry. Clara. She looked up instantly. Set the team up at the brownstone, he said. Full QRF posture. 24 hours out. Clara nodded once. Understood. Caleb Derren, Gunnar continued. Wolfmobile staged there. Engine's cold unless we say otherwise. Copy, Derren replied. Bianca, Gunnar added, already walking. Shift drone overwatch to the brownstone perimeter once we're set. On it, Bianca said, fingers already moving. Sophia, Gunnar finished. Your squad and air stay dark. High orbit. I don't want anyone feeling watched. Sophia gave him a sharp nod. They won't. Gunnar reached the door, pausing just long enough to look back at the room. This is standby, he said, not escalation. No one argued. They didn't need to. Rose opened the door for him. A rare courtesy. 24 hours, she said. After that, people start making mistakes. Gunnar stepped through. That's why we'll already be there. The door closed behind them, and with that, preparation ended. What came next wouldn't be planned. Chapter 25, Shadow Realm. The door to the back was not marked. It never had been. Silas stopped in front of it anyway. Not ceremonially, respectfully, like someone acknowledging a line that didn't care who you were. This is as far as I walk, he said. Gunnar nodded once. He understood boundaries. Rose didn't look at the door. She watched Aeliana instead. Aeliana's disguise held. Dark hair, muted presence, no staff, no visible authority. But the wards didn't care about appearances. They tightened the moment she stepped closer, reacting to what she was, not what she showed. Grim shifted. The massive bouncer turned fully now, blocking the doorway with his bulk. His eyes burned low and steady as he looked at Gunnar first. Alpha, he rumbled. Then his gaze slid to Aeliana. He didn't speak. He inhaled. The wards hummed. For a heartbeat, the bar itself seemed to lean in. This was only the second time Gunnar and Aeliana had stood here together. The first time had changed things. Not loudly. Permanently. Gunnar felt it again. That pressure behind the eyes. The sense that stepping forward meant agreeing to be measured by something older than law or politics. Aeliana felt it too. She reached out, fingers brushing Gunnar's wrist. Not for comfort, for alignment. I am unarmed, she said calmly. No title, no rank, just truth. Grim studied her for a long moment, then he shifted aside. Truce, he said. One word. Absolute. The door opened. The air changed immediately. The back room wasn't larger than before. It didn't need to be. Stone walls curved inward, etched with old marks that weren't decorative and didn't care who understood them. This was not a place for meetings. It was a place for survival without violence. Gunnar stepped inside first. Instinct. Alpha instinct. He scanned, counted exits, felt the way the room closed around intent rather than bodies. Aeliana followed. The wards responded instantly. Not alarmed. Aware. Her disguise thinned here. Not visibly. Spiritually. The room didn't see a woman pretending to be something else. It saw a guardian choosing restraint. Rose entered last, the door sealing behind them with a sound that felt uncomfortably final. Silence. Not empty. Watchful. Gunnar exhaled slowly. This room remembers, he said. Rose's smile was tight. It remembers who breaks things. Aeliana rested her hand against the stone wall. The hum beneath her palm wasn't hostile. It was curious. The bar went quiet before the door ever opened. Not all at once, not dramatically. Conversations thinned, laughter trailed off, glasses stopped mid-lift. Every supernatural in the room felt it before they understood it. Gunnar had arrived. Rose walked in first, casual as ever, as if she hadn't just shifted the temperature of the room by association alone. Aeliana followed, disguised, unremarkable to human eyes, and profoundly unsettling to those who knew better. Then Gunnar stepped through the doorway. Silence snapped tight. No one postured. No one challenged him. They didn't need to. Every supernatural in the Shadow Realm bar knew who he was. They knew the stories. They knew the body count. They knew what it meant when the alpha of the pack showed up in person instead of sending someone expendable. This wasn't intimidation. This was confirmation that something mattered enough to warrant his presence. Silas went behind the bar, expression steady, but even he tracked the room instinctively, watching the ripples spread and settle. "Alpha," he said, voice even. Gunnar inclined his head. No smile, no threat. Acknowledgement was enough. Aeliana said nothing. Her disguise held, but the wards hummed faintly as she passed, reacting to what she restrained rather than what she showed. More than one patron frowned, unsettled without knowing why. The bar resumed its murmur, but it was different now. Quieter. Careful. Patrons spoke in lower voices. Deals were postponed. Old grudges were suddenly remembered as bad investments. Everyone knew something was about to happen, and everyone knew Gunnar hadn't come to watch. "This room remembers," Gunnar said quietly. Rose's smile was thin. "It remembers who survives it." "It enforces restraint," she said, "not peace." Gunnar nodded. "And it punishes mistakes." For a moment, none of them spoke, because this wasn't a place for reassurance. This was a place where choices stopped being abstract, and the fact that Gunnar was standing here meant one thing, and one thing only. Whatever was about to happen was important enough that the consequences would be enforced. By him, if necessary. Silas stepped up beside them without a word and nodded once toward the back. "Come on," he said. "I'll show you the room." He didn't hurry. He didn't slow down. He led like someone who knew exactly how much time this place allowed. The door opened and the pressure changed immediately. Gunnar went first. Not out of habit, out of instinct. He crossed the threshold and started cataloguing without breaking stride. Distance to walls. Angles. The way the stone curved just enough to kill blind corners. Where sound died. Where it carried. Where someone thought they were out of sight and absolutely were not. No one spoke while he did it. Rose watched him with mild interest. She'd seen this before. Aeliana paused just inside the doorway. The runes caught her immediately. Not flashy, not ceremonial. Old, restrained, layered with the kind of logic only built by beings who had learned the hard way what shortcuts cost. The wards weren't stacked for power. They were braided for intent control. She moved slowly now, fingertips hovering just short of the stone. "These aren't suppression wards," she said quietly. Silas glanced at her. "No. They don't stop magic," she continued. "They redirect it, bleed it off, force it to resolve harmlessly or not at all." She looked genuinely impressed now. "That's elegant," Rose smiled. "High praise coming from you." Aeliana traced the layout with her eyes, following the flow the way a musician followed notes on a page. "The circle isn't centered," she observed. "It's offset." Silas nodded. "Deliberate. Keeps no one in a position of dominance." "And the anchor points," she added. "They're reactive. They adjust based on who enters." "Yes," Silas said. "The room listens first." Gunnar stopped near the center and turned slowly, finishing his mental map. "No raised positions," he said. "No obvious power seats. Everyone's exposed equally." "That's the idea," Silas replied. Gunnar nodded once. Approval, not praise. "If someone tries something," Gunnar said, "they won't have cover. physical or political. Aeliana looked back to the door, then to the walls again. This place was designed by someone who understood restraint, she said. Not peace. Restraint. Silas met her gaze. Peace is fragile. Restraint lasts longer. Gunnar exhaled slowly, satisfied. This will hold, he said, as long as everyone remembers why they're here. Rose folded her arms. And if they don't? Silas's expression didn't change. Then the room reminds them. Silence settled. Not heavy. Expectant. Gunnar took one last look around, committing the space to memory. All right, he said. We're good. Aeliana nodded. You've built something rare here. Silas allowed himself the faintest hint of pride. It only works, he said, if the right people respect it. Gunnar turned toward the door. They will, he said. Or they'll learn why they should have. No one argued. The room didn't either. They didn't linger. Silas led them back the way they'd come, the wards easing as the door opened, pressure releasing in quiet increments rather than all at once. The bar beyond had returned to its low murmur, but it wasn't the same. A few patrons tracked Gunnar with their eyes, and then very deliberately looked away. He noticed. He always did. Rose pushed through the door first, the street air hitting like a reset. Aeliana followed, her disguise settling back into place the moment the threshold was cleared. Gunnar came last, pausing just long enough to glance back at the building. Measured, logged, finished. Silas stepped out with them, hands in his pockets. Tomorrow, he said. Gunnar nodded. Tomorrow. Silas's gaze flicked briefly to Aeliana. The room will hold. I know, she replied. I'm more concerned with the people. Silas smiled faintly. So am I. They parted there. No handshakes, no reassurances. None were needed. The vehicles were waiting down the block. Engines turned over softly, one by one. Gunnar took the passenger seat without comment. Rose slid in beside him, already checking her phone. Aeliana settled in the back, eyes on the street, senses stretched thin but controlled. As they pulled away, the Shadow Realm bar faded back into anonymity. Just another forgettable building in a city full of them. Behind them, Neutrality waited. Ahead, Rose's brownstone and a team already moving into position. 24 hours out. Preparation was done. Whatever happened next wouldn't be planned. Chapter 26. Forward Command. The brownstone came online before sunrise. No lights outside. No visible movement. Inside, it shifted from residence to command space with practiced efficiency. Furniture moved, screens activated, comms synced. No one announced it. Everyone knew why they were there. Sophia took the center of the room without ceremony. This is forward command, she said. Once the meeting starts, everything routes through here. No objections. Bianca was already setting up along the far wall, drone feeds snapping into place one by one. A lattice of overlapping coverage bloomed across the main display. I'll have persistent eyes on every approach, Bianca said. Hardline and airborne, no blind spots. Sophia nodded. You call movement. I call response. Clara stood beside her, arms folded, Omega at her heel. The wolf's presence was calm, steady, a living anchor in a room full of contingency plans. Pack elements? Sophia asked. On standby, Clara replied. No visible posture. We move only if Gunnar says we move. Omega's ears twitched once. Agreement. Outside, engines rolled low and quiet. The Wolfmobile waited half a block away, tucked where it didn't draw attention. Caleb was in the driver's seat, hands light on the wheel. Desiree stood braced in the turret, the minigun locked and ready, her posture relaxed in the way only professionals managed. One of Sophia's operators manned the door-mounted 240B, eyes forward, waiting. Alpha sat in the rear, silent and watchful. Caleb checked the comms. Mobile QRF green. Desiree didn't look back. Weapons hot but safed. Call it, and we're moving. Inside the brownstone, Sophia acknowledged it with a nod. Hold position, she said. You're not here to intimidate. You're here to end things fast if they spill. Copy, Caleb replied. A few blocks closer to the bar, Eli stood near a service alley, bracer glove glowing faintly as she ran passive scans. Two of Sophia's operators flanked her, eyes up, weapons concealed. Wards are stable, Eli said quietly. No anomalies yet. I'll know the moment something starts pushing against them. Sophia's voice came through clean. Stay dark. You're our early warning, not our first strike. Always am, Eli replied. Sophia took one last look around the brownstone, every piece in place, every roll clear. This isn't about stopping what happens in that room, she said. It's about making sure whatever comes out of it doesn't get to pretend it wasn't seen. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The Shadow Realm bar waited a few streets away, neutral and patient. The QRF was live. And for the first time, the universe had nowhere to hide its mistakes. Chapter 27. Arrivals begin. Silas felt the wards tighten before the door opened. The first to arrive was Envoy Thalos of Atherin. Tall, severe, wrapped in layered robes that favoured intimidation over comfort. He carried himself like someone used to rooms bending around him. They didn't. Not here. Grim stepped into his path. Weapons! Thalos hesitated just long enough to remind everyone why he was dangerous. Then he produced a thin obsidian blade and a ring etched with suppression runes. Grim took both. Truce, he said. Thalos inclined his head and moved inside, eyes already scanning for advantage he wouldn't find. Silas poured him a drink. Thalos didn't touch it. Next came Marrow Ven, trade lord emissary from Mirkdusk. No robes, no guards, just a dark coat and eyes that missed nothing. Conversations dipped as he entered. Not fear, calculation. Mirkdusk didn't posture. It remembered. Grim blocked him. No weapons. None, Ven replied easily. Grim studied him, then stepped aside. Silas watched Thalos notice Ven across the room. Old negotiations. Old betrayals. Neither acknowledged the other. The room compressed. Then the door opened again, and everything changed. Argos stepped inside, not in armor, not in her true form. Just Argos. Dark hair loose, expression open, that faint familiar hum of confidence that came from someone who belonged everywhere because she'd earned it. The bar reacted instantly. Tension bled off, shoulders eased, a few patrons smiled, one actually laughed. About damn time, someone muttered. Silas froze for half a second, then he was already moving. Argos, he said, coming out from behind the bar. She grinned. Miss me. He pulled her into a rough, one-armed hug before she could say anything else. You disappear for months and walk back in like it's nothing, he said. You trying to give an old man a heart attack? She hugged him back just as tightly. You? Old? Don't insult the bar like that. Grim watched the exchange, expression unreadable. Then he stepped aside without speaking. No inspection. No warning. She was known. Silas poured her a drink and slid it across the bar. She took it immediately. Meeting already start? She asked. No, Silas said, but it's thinking about it. Argos glanced around the room, smile softening as she clocked who was present. Atherin, she said mildly. Mirkdusk, this is going to be fun. Silas leaned in closer. You picked a day. She met his eyes, serious now beneath the humour. I heard. The door remained closed, but with Argos present, the room felt steadier, like something warm had been placed carefully among live explosives. Silas exhaled slowly. Argos lingered at the bar only long enough to finish her drink. Then she turned, scanning the room with a familiarity that came from years of surviving places like this without needing to dominate them. She spotted them almost immediately. Shade stood near the far wall, half in shadow out of habit more than necessity. Katrina leaned against a column nearby, arms crossed, posture loose, eyes sharp. Neither was armed. Neither needed to be. Argos smiled. Well, she said, walking over. This just got better. Shade's mouth twitched. You're late. You're alive, Argos replied. I call that even. Katrina straightened and pulled Argos into a quick, solid hug. No tension, no hesitation. Good to see you, Katrina said. Wasn't sure you'd make it. Wouldn't miss this, Argos replied. Too many people pretending they're in control. Shade glanced toward the bar. Silas still pretending this place doesn't age him? Argos snorted. He pretends. The bar knows better. The three of them settled into an easy triangle, the kind built on shared history and unspoken understanding. Anyone watching closely would have noticed something important. They weren't posturing. They weren't watching exits. They weren't hunting. They were waiting. Across the room, a few other arrivals took note and recalibrated. Not because Shade or Katrina were dangerous, because Argos choosing to stand with them said something about who mattered. Silas watched it all from behind the bar, expression thoughtful. Good, he thought. The right people are finding each other early. Grim remained at his post, unmoving, enforcing the same rules without bias. The wards hummed steadily, neither tightening nor relaxing. The room was settling now. Not calm, aligned, and that was far more dangerous. The bar shifted before the door opened. Not sharply, not alarmed, just aware. Silas felt it first. Grim straightened a fraction. A few heads turned without anyone meaning to. Then the door opened. Gunnar stepped inside. The reaction wasn't dramatic. It never was. Conversations didn't stop. No one flinched. But the room adjusted its breathing, the way predators did when something higher on the chain entered the space. Darren came in behind him, casual as ever, scanning the room like he was checking out a bar instead of a pressure cooker. Regin followed, composed, eyes already clocking faces and exits. Aeliana entered last, disguised, presence folded inward but unmistakably aligned with the alpha at the front. Argos saw them immediately, her face lit up. "Well, I'll be damned," she said, already moving. Silas watched the tension ease just a notch as she crossed the room. That mattered. She went straight to Gunnar first, giving him a quick, solid embrace. No ceremony, no awe. Just familiarity earned the hard way. "You look like hell," she said fondly. "Good to see you too," Gunnar replied. She stepped back, gave Regina a nod of respect, then turned to Aeliana, her smile softening. "You made it," Argos said. "About time." Aeliana returned the smile. "It's good to see you again." Then Argos turned and spotted Darren. Her eyes widened. "Oh no," she said, pointing at him. "You!" Darren grinned. "Me?" Before he could say anything else, Argos was on him, hugging him hard enough to knock the air out of his lungs. "You disappeared," she said. "Again." "You're alive," Darren shot back. "Again." She leaned back, eyes flicking to his belt, his pockets, his hands. "You bring me anything shiny?" Darren reached into his jacket like this was the most normal question in the world and produced a small, polished metal token, etched and gleaming faintly. Argos gasped. "You remembered." "Always do," he said. "I'm not stupid." She took it reverently, turning it in the light. "And," she added, narrowing her eyes at him, "you still owe me that dance." Darren blinked. "The lounge," she said. "You promised." He glanced at Gunnar, who was already pretending not to hear. "We'll see," Darren said carefully. Argos grinned, already tugging at his sleeve. "After. You don't get out of it this time." She finally stepped back, letting the group breathe. "Welcome back," she said, tone shifting, not heavier, just real. "You picked today." Gunnar nodded. "So I hear." Grim watched the exchange without comment. The wards didn't tighten. They didn't need to. This wasn't disruption. This was alignment. Silas exhaled slowly behind the bar. "Good," he thought again. "The right people are here now." The door closed behind them, and for the first time the room felt complete. The doorway waited. Not dramatic, not glowing, just a door like any other, except everyone in the room knew it wasn't. Gunnar crossed first, No hesitation, no ceremony. The threshold rippled once and accepted him without comment. Aeliana followed, disguise holding as the magic recognized permission, not nature. The transition folded around her smoothly, like silk drawn through a ring. Argos stepped up next. She glanced back over her shoulder, grin already forming. "All right," she said. "Home rules." She crossed the threshold, and the moment the door accepted her, she let go. The illusion peeled away like mist burned off by sunlight. Her true form settled into place smoothly, comfortably. Goblin features sharp and elegant rather than monstrous, skin carrying a faint earthen sheen, eyes bright with intelligence and humour. Power hummed around her now, no longer muted, but it wasn't threatening. It was familiar. The supernatural side of the bar seemed to relax around her. A few patrons smiled. Someone raised a glass in greeting. Silas, already on the other side, shook his head fondly. "There she is." Argos rolled her shoulders like someone shrugging off a coat. "I've been cramped all morning." The supernatural side opened beyond them, darker, deeper, real in the way only truth ever was. Then there was a pause. Darren and Regin stood at the threshold, suddenly very aware of the number of people not watching them anymore. Regin glanced sideways. "You good?" Darren swallowed and reached into his jacket. The invitation came out slightly crumpled, like it had been checked 3 times already. He stared at it, then at the doorway. "Last time I did this," he muttered, "I ended up out back behind a dumpster with a raccoon judging my life choices." "That raccoon had valid concerns," Regin said. Darren took a breath, squared his shoulders, and held the invitation out like it might bite him. "Okay," he said. "Okay, this is fine, totally fine." He shut his eyes, stepped forward. Nothing happened. He cracked one eye open. Still nothing. Then the air shifted. The world folded, unfolded, and Darren stumbled forward a half step as reality politely rearranged itself around him. He froze, opened both eyes. Stone walls, dim light, the supernatural side of the bar, no dumpsters, no raccoon. Rose stood a few steps away, arms folded, watching him with open amusement. "Well," she said, "look at that." Darren stared at his hands, then behind him, then back at Rose. "Holy shit," he breathed. It worked. Regin stepped through behind him smoothly, invitation dissolving into faint light as the threshold accepted her too. She looked around once, then at Darren. "Congratulations," she said. "You didn't get rejected by reality." Darren turned in a slow circle, awe giving way to a grin. "I told you," he said to no one in particular. "I belong everywhere." Argos laughed outright. Rose stepped forward, clapping him once on the shoulder. "Don't get cocky. The door's not sentimental." Darren nodded rapidly. Understood, deeply humbled, still alive. Gunnar watched it all, expression unreadable but eyes softer than before. The last of the barrier sealed behind them with a quiet final sound. Everyone who mattered was through. The jokes faded, the air settled. Regin didn't move right away. The doorway sealed behind them with that soft final sound, and she stood there, eyes tracking the way the light behaved differently on stone than it ever had on plaster. The air felt heavier, not oppressive, just aware. "So, this is what you've all been hiding," she said quietly. "Not hiding," Darren replied. "Strategically undersharing." She shot him a look, then turned slowly, taking it all in. The patrons in true form. The architecture that ignored human geometry. Argos ahead of them now, fully herself, laughing with someone who called her name like it meant home. Regin exhaled. Long, steady. "Okay," she said again, more firmly this time. "Yeah, I get it." Gunnar didn't rush her. He just waited, letting the moment lock in. When she finally stepped forward, it was with purpose. Silas gestured toward the corridor leading deeper into the bar. "Meeting rooms this way." They started walking. Regin stayed close to Aeliana, glancing once at the runes carved into the walls as they passed, not in fear, but in fascination. She didn't ask questions yet. She was cataloguing. Later, she murmured under her breath, I'm going to have a lot of questions. Aeliana smiled. I'll be disappointed if you don't. Ahead of them, the corridor narrowed, the hum of wards growing more pronounced. Behind them, the bar resumed its low murmur. And, with Earth finally walking forward instead of standing at the threshold, the last excuse for hesitation, quietly, fell away. The corridor narrowed as they moved, the hum of wards deepening with every step. Stone replaced wood. Light dimmed, then steadied, deliberate and even. This part of the bar wasn't meant to be welcoming. It was meant to be fair. Silas stopped at the threshold of the meeting room and stepped aside. Gunnar entered first. He took 2 steps in and halted, eyes already mapping the space. Where sound carried, where it died, where someone would instinctively stand, and why that instinct would betray them. Aeliana followed, her attention drawn immediately to the runes worked into the stone. Not decorative, not symbolic, functional, old, thoughtful. She slowed just enough to appreciate the craftsmanship before moving on. Regin came next. She paused again just for a heartbeat as the room opened around her. The geometry was wrong in subtle ways. The air felt balanced, not neutral. Intent mattered here. She straightened and walked in anyway. Darren brought up the rear, glancing back once like he half expected the room to change its mind. It didn't. Argos stepped in last, fully herself now. Goblin form unhidden, presence warm and unmistakable. The room accepted her without comment. The door closed, not loudly, not dramatically, just final. Silence settled, the kind that wasn't empty but expectant. Everyone took their place naturally, no one elevated, no one hidden. Exactly as designed. Silas remained near the wall, hands loose at his sides. This room enforces truce, he said simply. Not agreement. Gunnar nodded. That's all we need. Aeliana rested her hand lightly against the stone, feeling the wards respond. It will hold. Regin took one last look around, then met Gunnar's gaze. Whatever awe she'd felt outside was gone now, replaced by resolve. All right, she said. Let's do this. No one argued. Outside, the Shadow Realm bar continued as it always had, drinks poured and stories traded, oblivious by design. Inside the meeting room, everyone who mattered was finally present, and the universe, having done all it could to delay the moment, went very quiet. Chapter 28. The Cost of Waiting. The door sealed behind them with a sound that wasn't loud but final. Stone replaced wood. The hum of wards settled into the bones of the room, not watching for violence so much as intent. This chamber had been shaped for one purpose only, to ensure that whatever was decided inside, it could not be undone by force or theatrics. Gunnar felt it immediately. The way the air refused posturing. The way sound carried evenly no matter where you stood. This was not a room that rewarded dominance. It rewarded clarity. They took their places without instruction. Regin stood where she could see everyone. Darren stayed just off Gunnar's shoulder, close enough to listen, far enough not to intrude. Katrina and Shade remained together, not guarding, not threatening, simply present, the quiet acknowledgement of a realm that had learned the cost of being overlooked. Argos settled easily, fully herself now, goblin form unhidden, her ease a reminder that some wars did not begin with fear, but with familiarity strained too far. Envoy Thalos sat opposite her, posture formal, expression unreadable. Nezra of Atherin did not sit immediately. She rested her hand lightly against the stone wall, eyes half-lidded, listening to the room itself before committing to a position. Kale stood near Rose. Rose did not take a seat at all, and Aeliana remained still. The room waited. This was the moment most councils filled with ritual, titles spoken, authority declared, order imposed, Aeliana let none of that happen. "I didn't ask you here because something exploded," she said at last. Her voice carried without effort. Not command, not magic, just certainty earned the hard way. "I asked you here because something stopped." That was enough to pull every eye to her. Aeliana did not move to the center. She did not claim the room. She had learned long ago that claiming space was unnecessary when truth already occupied it. "Black Dawn has been withdrawing," she continued. "Not routed, not broken, withdrawn, quietly, cleanly, with intent." She let the words sit there. "For those of you who have fought long wars, you already know what that means." Her gaze shifted briefly to Katrina and Shade. Recognition, not appeal. Then to Nezra, who inclined her head slightly. "It means they are finished reacting," Aeliana said. "They believe they have learned enough." Gunnar felt the weight of that settle. This wasn't strategy being shared. It was pattern recognition. The kind that came from watching too many people die while councils debated definitions. "I have seen this phase before," Aeliana went on. "I have seen what follows when an enemy decides time belongs to them, when they stop testing defenses and begin shaping outcomes." Her voice didn't sharpen. It didn't need to. "Good people die while everyone waits for certainty." The words landed without accusation, which made them harder to dismiss. "Mirkdusk recognized this shift," she said, turning slightly so both Argos and Thalos were within her line of sight. "And chose not to wait for permission. That choice is why they sit here now, as part of an alliance with Earth and Alfheim. No applause, no reaction, just acknowledgement." "This meeting is not about mobilization," Aeliana said, "and it is not about assigning blame." She paused, and for the first time there was something beneath her composure. Not anger, not fear, but fatigue. "I intervened once," she said quietly. "Not because I wanted to, because waiting had already become a decision, and that decision was killing people." No one missed what she didn't say. The oath, the punishment, the line she crossed. "I would have stepped in regardless of who fell," Aeliana continued, "because the pattern was already clear." She met the room evenly now. "Black Dawn believes the rules will protect them while they prepare." The wards hummed softly, as if acknowledging the irony. "I am here to convince you that waiting will not." Silence followed. Not the polite kind, the dangerous kind. The kind where everyone understood that what came next would decide whether this room mattered or whether it would simply become another place people later blamed. Aeliana did not sit. She had said what needed to be said. The meeting could begin when the rest of them were ready to admit it. The silence after Aeliana's words didn't break. It thinned. That was worse. Nezra was the first to sit, folding into the stone chair like someone who had learned long ago that listening was an act, not a pause. Envoy Thalos followed, slower, posture precise, hands placed deliberately on the table as if alignment alone could substitute for commitment. Argos didn't sit right away. She leaned back against the wall instead, arms crossed, watching faces instead of listening for words. Darren shifted his weight beside Aeliana. Not forward, not back, just enough to be noticed. "So," he said lightly, as if they were standing at a bar instead of inside a room designed to prevent bloodshed. "Everyone here agrees Black Dawn pulling back is bad." No one answered immediately. Darren smiled, small and harmless. "That's good," he went on. "Means we're starting from the same brochure." Thalos cleared his throat. "Mirkdusk recognizes the tactical implications." Darren raised a finger. "Hold that thought." Thalos stopped, clearly not used to being interrupted by someone without robes, sigils, or a title. Darren turned his head slightly, eyes moving across the table. "I'm not asking what you recognize. I'm asking what you're prepared to do about it." Rose watched the shift ripple through the room, the subtle tightening of shoulders, the way some gazes slid sideways, searching for cover in procedure. "Good," she thought. "Now we're honest." Nezra spoke calmly. Atherin does not move quickly. No, Darren agreed immediately. You move carefully. Big difference. Careful means you still move. Nezra studied him for a long moment, then inclined her head once. Not agreement. Respect. Argos pushed off the wall. Mirkdusk is already moving quietly, she said. Trade routes adjusted, eyes redirected. We didn't wait for consensus because consensus is slow. Thalos stiffened. Those actions were provisional. Everything is provisional until someone commits, Darren replied, including waiting. That landed harder than it should have. Aeliana remained silent, letting the words do their work. She didn't need to steer this. She was watching what each realm did when the conversations stopped being theoretical. Rose finally spoke, voice smooth, almost conversational. No one is being asked to sign anything tonight. Several people visibly relaxed. Rose smiled inwardly. But, she continued, we are going to leave this room knowing who intends to act if Black Dawn makes the next move, and who intends to request another meeting. That did it. Region felt it too. The moment where the floor shifted from discussion to exposure. Darren tilted his head, grin returning. See? Low pressure. No commitments. Just honesty. He glanced at Thalos again. So, when Black Dawn resurfaces, and they will, are you calling allies or drafting statements? The room went quiet. Not because no one had an answer, because some of them suddenly realized they didn't like the one they had. Nezra was the one who broke the silence this time. You speak as though preparation is theoretical, she said, her voice calm but pointed. It is not. She looked directly at Aeliana now. Atherin does not wait for catastrophe, Nezra continued. Earth and Alfheim trainers are already on our soil, teaching our commanders how to fight entities that do not respect formation, fear, or mercy. That landed differently than rhetoric. We did not announce it, Nezra said. We did not seek approval. We sought survival. Darren's expression didn't change, but Rose caught the flicker of satisfaction behind his eyes. Aeliana inclined her head slightly. Not pride. Acknowledgement. Mirkdusk has done the same, Argos added, pushing off the wall and finally taking a seat. Joint teams, shared doctrine. Not because we trust each other completely, but because ignorance gets people killed faster than betrayal. Envoy Thalos stiffened. Those agreements were not intended to imply. They imply commitment, Darren cut in gently, whether you like the optics or not. Thalos pressed his lips together. Region spoke for the first time since the room had shifted. Earth doesn't deploy training teams casually, she said. If we put people on the ground in Atherin, if Alfheim signs off on shared command doctrine, that means we're already spending political capital we can't get back. She looked around the table. We don't do that unless we believe the threat is inevitable. Silence followed. This time it was heavier on one side of the room than the other. Rose let her gaze drift, unhurried, cataloguing reactions. Nezra steady. Argos openly aligned. Aeliana, immovable. Earth already invested. Her eyes settled on Cale briefly, then beyond him, to the empty space Concordia represented. And Concordia? Rose said aloud, tone mild. No accusation, just placement. We are rebuilding, Cale replied carefully. Trade first. Stability before. Before you choose a side, Darren finished for him. Cale bristled. That's exactly what it is, Darren said, still calm. You're not wrong for it. But let's not pretend it's the same thing as what they're doing. He gestured lightly toward Nezra and Argos. They're training for a war they hope doesn't come. You're fixing the economy so you can survive if it does. Rose didn't intervene. She didn't need to. Because the distinction had already been drawn. Some realms were preparing people to fight. Some were preparing explanations. And everyone in the room now knew which was which. Cale straightened. Not defensively, deliberately. I'm not going to let that sit, he said. voice even but edged. Concordia didn't survive occupation by being naive. Darren met his eyes, still relaxed, still listening. I fought in the Shadow Wars, Cale continued. I ran with the resistance while Black Dawn held the city. I buried people who didn't get out in time. Don't mistake rebuilding for avoidance. The room recalibrated. Rose felt it immediately. So did Katrina. Cale exhaled once, steadying himself. When Black Dawn withdrew, Concordia didn't get peace, he said. We got chaos. Power vacuums, houses turning on each other, supply lines shattered. You can't train an army when the streets aren't safe enough to move food. He looked at Argos, then Nezra, honest, not pleading. So yes, Cale said, defences were neglected, because stability wasn't optional. It was the only thing keeping Concordia from tearing itself apart. Rose stepped forward then, just one pace. Enough. He's not wrong, she said calmly. I told him to prioritize security and trade. Someone had to keep the city breathing while the rest of you planned for the next war. Her gaze flicked briefly to Nezra, to Argos, to Aeliana. And for the record, Rose added, the previous council stepping down wasn't an accident. They were obstacles. They understood that. No one asked how she'd made that happen. They didn't need to. Cale nodded once, grateful but not diminished. We have a security force now, trained for internal threats, rapid response, crowd control. It's not an army, but it's kept Concordia intact. Darren considered him for a long moment, then he shrugged. See, he said mildly, that's not cowardice, that's context. Cale frowned. You could have led with that. Wouldn't have gotten the truth, Darren replied. Rose hid her smile. Aeliana finally spoke again, not to correct, not to judge. This is exactly why this meeting exists, she said. Some of you have been preparing for war. Some of you have been preventing collapse. Her eyes moved across the table, resting briefly on Cal. Both matter, she said, but they are not the same. Silence followed. Not uncomfortable, clarified. Concordia wasn't refusing to commit. It was choosing when it could afford to, and now everyone in the room understood the cost of that choice. Aeliana stepped forward again. Not because the room had lost control, because it had found honesty. There is a difference, she said calmly, between being unprepared and being unable. Her gaze rested on Cale, not accusing, not softening. Concordia has been unable, Aeliana continued. Not unwilling, and that distinction matters. She turned slightly, widening her focus to include the table. But inability does not excuse delay forever. That was the line, not shouted, not dramatic, just placed. The portal network is back online, Aeliana said. For the first time since Black Dawn fractured it, the realms are no longer isolated. She let that reality settle. That changes what help can look like. Nezra inclined her head. Atherin cannot spare armies, she said. Nor would it offer them lightly. But trade stabilizes before steel ever does. Her eyes shifted to Cale. We can reopen controlled routes, food, materials, advisors. Not soldiers, but infrastructure. Enough to keep Concordia standing while it prepares. Argos nodded. Mirkdusk can do the same, she said. Limited shipments, secure caravans, shared intelligence along reopened routes. She smiled faintly. Trade keeps people fed. Fed people don't riot. Riot-free cities can train. Thalos hesitated, then added carefully. Mirkdusk will not exploit Concordia's recovery. The agreement we signed with Earth and Alfheim applies here as well. That earned a look from Rose. Good, she said, because I'd notice. A few mouths twitched despite themselves. Aeliana folded her hands loosely in front of her. This is not charity, she said, and it is not obligation. It is recognition. She met each representative's eyes in turn. Black Dawn fractured the realms by isolating them. Reconnection is the first act of resistance. Not because it prepares us for war, but because it denies them the conditions they rely on. She paused. Those who are ready to train will train, Aeliana said. Those who must first stabilize will stabilize, but no realm here will pretend that standing still is neutrality. The wards hummed softly, as if approving the distinction. Kale exhaled slowly, tension easing just a fraction. If trade routes reopen, he said, Concordia can accelerate security training. Not tomorrow, but soon. Rose nodded once. That's all we need. Momentum. Darren leaned in slightly toward Aeliana, voice low enough not to break the room. See? He murmured. Nobody was full of it, just stretched thin. Aeliana didn't smile, but she didn't disagree. The meeting hadn't produced a plan. It had produced direction. And for the first time since Black Dawn had gone quiet, the silence felt contested. Chapter 29. Boundaries. The air changed. It wasn't dramatic at first. No thunder, no flare of light. Just a sudden, unmistakable pressure, like the room had taken a breath and refused to let it go. The Guardian didn't move from where she stood. Young, yes. Too young to be comfortable. But her spine was straight, her expression steady, and when she raised her hand, she did it with the confidence of someone who believed she had every right to be here. Light folded in on itself. A translucent barrier snapped into existence between her and the pack. Not violent, not explosive, precise. A dome of layered force, runes interlocking so fast they blurred, each sigil locking into the next like a solved equation. Omega hit it first. Not charging, testing. The impact thudded through the room, a low, resonant boom that rattled glasses and made the floor hum beneath their boots. The shield held, didn't flicker, didn't bend. Alpha stepped forward immediately, massive form filling the space, hackles rising, golden eyes fixed on the Guardian with cold, assessing intensity. The Wolfmobile's engines spooled outside. Not loud, not aggressive. Ready. Desera's minigun began to spin up, the whine cutting through the air like a blade just short of drawing blood. And still the Guardian did not flinch. Stand down, she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried the weight of magic woven deep, authority threaded through every syllable. Clara moved, one step forward, deliberate, controlled. Omega immediately shifted to her left, Alpha to her right, a wall of fur, teeth, and intent. This is Earth, Clara said, voice calm but iron hard beneath it. You don't deploy force on my ground and call it balance. The Guardian finally looked at her. Really looked. Something flickered in her eyes then. Surprise. Recognition. Uncertainty she masked a heartbeat too late. I am acting under Guardian mandate, the Guardian replied, lifting her chin. This situation is contained. Clara smiled, and it wasn't friendly. Contained, she echoed. You dropped a portal into a live staging area, locked weapons in place and put a shield between my people and a perceived threat. She took another step forward. The shield hummed in response, pressure increasing, runes brightening as they compensated. You didn't contain anything, Clara said. You escalated. The Guardian's jaw tightened. Behind Clara, Caleb's hand hovered near his weapon. Desera didn't take her eyes off the shield, already mapping its weaknesses. Alpha's low growl rolled through the space like distant thunder, and then Clara raised her hand. The pack froze instantly. Even the miniguns spun down, the sudden silence louder than the threat had been. Clara's eyes never left the Guardian. Lower it, she said. Not a request, not a challenge. A line was being drawn, the shield remained. The Guardian swallowed, and for the first time since she arrived, it was clear to everyone in the room. She had stepped into something far larger than she understood. The brownstone was quiet in the way only prepared places ever were. Not empty, not relaxed. Waiting. Clara stood at the centre of the forward room, boots planted on hardwood worn thin by decades of footsteps. The walls smelled faintly of old stone and oil. Outside, the city moved normally. Cars passed, voices carried, life continued, unaware it was being measured. Omega pressed close at her left, massive and still, breath slow, every sense tuned outward. Alpha mirrored him on her right, weight balanced forward, ready to explode into motion without a sound. The pack felt it before it happened. Not magic, not danger. Intrusion. The air folded inward. Not torn, not forced, compressed. A thin vertical seam of pale light split the alley beyond the rear windows, narrow as a blade edge, silent and precise. Sound dulled for half a second, like the world holding its breath. A portal. Not a gate, not a frame. A guardian aperture, anchored briefly to a ley line and stabilized by will alone. Clara's jaw tightened. That shouldn't be here. The guardian stepped through. Female, young. Her posture was too formal, her bearing still sharp with instruction rather than experience. Pale light clung to her outline for a heartbeat before collapsing inward as the portal sealed behind her without sound, leaving the alley exactly as it had been. Except it wasn't. Omega rose in one smooth motion, fur lifting along his spine, a low vibration rolling through his chest that never quite became a growl. Alpha shifted beside him, muscles coiling, eyes locked forward. Inside the brownstone, everything aligned. Weapons came up, not shouted, not panicked. Disciplined. Outside, the Wolfmobile's turret motors whined as the minigun rotated into alignment, barrels spinning once, twice, then holding. Caleb didn't look away from the Guardian. DeSera's hands were steady on the controls. Alpha's presence loomed near the vehicle, massive and immovable. Clara stepped forward. One pace. Omega matched her stride. Alpha moved with her, forming a living wall of muscle and intent. She felt the pack settle behind her, every bond tightening, every sense keyed to her presence. The Guardian spoke first. "You will stand down." Her voice carried resonance, not threat. Authority trained to expect compliance. Clara didn't answer immediately. She studied her. Too young to be sent alone, too composed for a crisis response, portal technique clean but rushed. Someone had pushed her. "You're on Earth," Clara said calmly. Her voice held no magic, no raised edge, just fact. On pack-controlled ground. The Guardian hesitated. Just enough. "I am authorized—" "No," Clara interrupted. Not louder, sharper. "You were sent. That's not the same thing." The Guardian's eyes flicked across the scene. The wolves, the humans, the weapon systems that didn't care about Guardian doctrine. "This meeting must remain uninfluenced," the Guardian said, reaching for training. Clara tilted her head slightly. "We're not influencing anything," she replied. "We're preventing interference, including yours." Omega stepped forward. The pavement seemed to shrink beneath him. Alpha's growl surfaced at last, low and controlled, vibrating through the alley like distant thunder. Not a threat. A warning. The Guardian swallowed. Clara saw it then. Not fear. Confusion. Good. "You don't command the pack," Clara said. "You don't override Earth's authority, and you don't issue orders here without explaining why you crossed realms through a Guardian-only portal to do it." Silence stretched. The Guardian didn't deny it. That told Clara everything. "You're young," Clara said quietly, "and you believe you're here to prevent harm, which means someone convinced you this was necessary." The Guardian's expression flickered. Doubt. Then discipline snapped back into place. Chapter 30. Ripples. Bianca saw it before the system understood what it was seeing. The drone feed stuttered for half a frame. Not static, not interference. A distortion localized and brief, like heat shimmer without heat. The software flagged nothing. No portal signature. No energy spike large enough to trip alarms. Bianca leaned forward anyway. "That's not nothing," she muttered. She rewound the feed manually. The ripple was clearer the second time, a subtle displacement in the air just off the sidewalk near the Shadow Realm Bar's service alley. The world bent inward for the span of a heartbeat, light pulling tight around a vertical seam that never fully formed. Then someone stepped through. No flash, no sound, just presence where there hadn't been any before. The figure was wrong in the way experienced operators learn to trust. Too clean, too deliberate. The drone's optics refused to resolve details, focus sliding just enough to blur features without triggering countermeasure alerts. Eli, Bianca said, already opening the channel. I've got a ripple. Bar perimeter, not a standard entry. The figure didn't hesitate, didn't scan, didn't pause. They turned once as if orienting themselves and walked straight toward the Shadow Realm bar. Inside Eli's mobile rig, screens lit in response. Arcane sensors flared, runes scrolling in tight patterns along the edges of her display. She frowned. I see it, Eli said. Something passed through. Whatever it was, it masked clean. No residual signature I can lock onto. Can you ID? Bianca asked. Eli shook her head, fingers dancing over the interface. No face. No aura resolution. It's like the system doesn't want to look at them. That was worse than a hard no. On Bianca's feed, the figure reached the door. The wards didn't react. They opened. And then the figure was inside, swallowed by the noise and light and layered magic of the bar before Bianca could push the drone any closer without violating neutrality protocols. Shit, Bianca breathed. We lost them inside. Eli didn't respond immediately. She was recalibrating, pushing sensors just short of tripping the bar's defenses. Whoever that was, Eli said finally, they know exactly how the wards work. Bianca didn't like how calm her own voice sounded when she keyed the next channel. Clara, we've got an unknown entry at the Shadow Realm bar. Non-standard transit. Identity unconfirmed. There was a pause. Not dead air. Busy air. Desiree answered instead. Copy, Desiree said, voice tight but controlled. Metal and machinery hummed faintly in the background. Bad timing. We're a little occupied at the moment. Bianca glanced at her screens, then back toward the bar. Occupied how? She asked, already knowing she wasn't going to like the answer. Guardian on site, Desiree replied. Shields up. Pack's holding. Clara's handling it. That did it. Eli looked up sharply. A Guardian? Here? Yeah, Desiree said. And no, it's not normal. Bianca exhaled slowly. So, we've got an unknown entity inside a neutral ground, Bianca said, thinking out loud, and command is pinned by a jurisdictional standoff. Desiree didn't argue. Affirmative, she said. Eyes only. No moves until we're clear. Bianca watched the bar entrance, the door swinging open and closed as patrons came and went, unaware that something had slipped in ahead of them. Copy, Bianca said. We'll hold and observe. She cut the channel and leaned back, jaw tight. Inside the Shadow Realm bar, the music swelled. Glasses clinked. Laughter rose and fell like nothing in the world was wrong. But Bianca knew better. Whatever had just walked through that door had done so because everyone else was distracted, and that was never an accident. The bar didn't notice the figure at first. Music rolled, glass clinked. A laugh broke somewhere near the back booths. The Shadow Realm bar did what it always did best, absorbed strangers and sanded off their edges. The figure didn't head for the bar, didn't linger, didn't scan the room. They walked straight for the threshold. Grim shifted, just enough. The door to the supernatural side loomed behind him, old wood reinforced with sigils that had been etched, burned, broken, and reforged more times than anyone remembered. Grim's massive frame filled the space without trying to. He didn't block the path. He was the path. The figure stopped. That alone mattered. Grim studied them in silence. His eyes weren't human. They didn't focus on faces or posture. They pressed inward, weighing intent the way gravity weighs mass. No weapons, the figure said calmly. They raised their hands slowly, palms open, turning once so there was no question. No blades, no concealed shapes, no magic clinging where it shouldn't. Grim didn't move. Neutral, he rumbled. One word. It cost him to speak, and he didn't waste it. Yes, the figure replied. No hesitation. No violence, no influence, no pursuit. I know the rules of the bar. I will obey them. That gave Grim pause. Not because the words were correct, because they were precise. Grim leaned forward slightly, the wards along the door humming in response. He could feel the truth of the statement. Not sincerity, not friendliness. Compliance. The figure met his gaze without flinching. I seek shelter, they added. Not leverage. Grim considered that. Shelter was allowed. He reached out, one massive hand closing briefly around the doorframe. The wards flared, testing, scraping across the figure's presence like a comb drawn through static. They held. No resistance, no pushback, no attempt to bend the rules. Grim exhaled slowly. Truce, he said. The door opened. The figure stepped past him and crossed the threshold. The air changed, not violently, subtly. The supernatural side of the bar accepted the intrusion, but not comfortably. Wards tightened. Magic redistributed. A few patrons glanced up, then looked away, instincts prickling without explanation. Grim remained where he was, eyes tracking the figure until they disappeared into the deeper shadows of the room. He didn't follow. But he didn't relax either. Somewhere else, Bianca's drone feed showed nothing but normal movement. Inside the bar, neutrality held. And something that understood exactly how fragile that neutrality was had just stepped fully inside it. Chapter 31. The Name That Breaks Neutrality. The knock was polite. That was the first thing wrong with it. Silas looked up from the table, already irritated. No one knocked on that door unless they didn't belong there. The wards were still humming faintly from the earlier discussions, the room thick with unfinished intent and half-made decisions. He crossed the room himself. No guards, no theatrics. Silas opened the door and stopped. For the first time in a very long while, his face forgot how to be neutral. The man standing there was thinner than memory, skin drawn tight, eyes too sharp for someone who had survived as long as he had. Empty hands, no weapons, no visible magic. But Silas knew him. Everyone in this room would. You don't belong here, Silas said quietly, already shifting to block the doorway. I know, the man replied calmly. That's why I knocked. Silas tried to angle his body to keep the room behind him hidden, to redirect the moment into something manageable. Neutral ground doesn't... I'm not violating it, the man said. I'm unarmed. I know the rules. You verified me yourself. Silas hesitated. That hesitation was all it took. The man stepped past him, and the room changed. Every head turned at once. Not curiosity, recognition. Katrina went still. Shade's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon before he even realized he'd shifted his weight. Rose felt it like a knife sliding under old scar tissue. Gunner's expression didn't change, but his hand dropped to his comms. QRF, he said evenly. We have a problem. Deploy. There was a half-second of silence. Then DeSera's voice came back, tight and controlled. Copy. We've got one too. Guardian interference. We're delayed. Gunner didn't swear. That made it worse. The man smiled faintly, like someone who had always known this was how it would end. Shade took a step forward. Katrina's hand snapped out. No, she said. One word. Absolute. Shade froze, eyes flicking to her, then back to the man. He could feel it too now, the pressure, the shift in the air. He's mine, Katrina said, and the room felt it when she claimed him. Darkness stirred at her feet, not summoned, not controlled, remembered. Tendrils of shadow crept outward like living things, curling along the stone floor, brushing against chair legs, tasting the space. Aeliana's breath caught. Rose's eyes narrowed, calculating how many rules were about to snap. Silas closed the door behind them slowly. Neutral ground strained. The man's voice was calm when he finally spoke again. "You see," he said softly, "I came the right way." No one answered him, because every person in that room knew the truth now. The traitor was gone. Andolin stood exposed, and neutrality was about to be tested by something far older than law. Silence settled over the room. Katrina stood perfectly still. The shadows at her feet moved anyway, slow and patient, brushing the edge of the wards without crossing them. Andolin did not step back. Gunnar lowered his hand from his comms. Whatever was happening outside, it wasn't coming in time. Silas watched the wards hold and understood how close they were to failing without actually failing yet. Shade shifted his weight once, then stopped. No one spoke. Neutral ground remained intact, but no one in the room believed it would stay that way.
They're wrong. The only safety is in knowing what's real. You found this channel, you've seen past the illusion. Make your choice. Hit the like button. Follow the channel. Align yourself before the shadows decide for you.